come up through the session, and they will be, these are broad enough. We hope to make them broad enough that they sort of cover most of the things that will come through. We can go over it briefly, but to be sure, one issue that will at least hover over the entire session is the issue of vouchers. It will, if it's not presented in legislation early, it will sort of be expected, and there'll be sort of a cloud through the whole session, and maybe it's used as bargaining chips through the session by legislators. Maybe it's not, but there will always be an edge to education discussion at the legislature this year. Even more so, really, if it's not presented as a bill and just sort of hangs out there waiting like a cloud, which I expect. So if you look through, there are some basic general topics that we will cover. And we're not asking for a vote on this. This is for your input, looking for consensus. If we need to add things, we'll add them. If we need to take them out, we'll take them out. But tomorrow I'm meeting with some legislators. I want to get started on it and be sure they have these. All right, so first is funding, and you will see several things in there that are relatively specific, but still general. For example, there's a discussion of funding RTI. Right now, last year, for the first time, RTI was included as part of the BEP calculation, some money funding the RTI. Now that, the good news was, right, they added a factor to the BEP for the first time since it began. The bad news is they probably funded 3% of what it really costs, 5% maybe of what it really costs. And so that's something, but there's certainly room to grow. If you have any questions about that, I'll be glad to touch on them. There's one on there about the change in the definition of economically disadvantaged or at risk in the BEP formula particularly. And when they made that change to direct certification, so they count the students who receive benefits. They upped the amount per student in the formula. The idea was, and the plan was, for no one to lose any money. So they adjusted the amount per student, knowing that the number of students would go down. I think they miscalculated, and they need to fund that quite a bit more, and really up the amount per student in that calculation in general anyway, and that's listed as one of those factors. The next main heading is governance, local control, and the primary point there is the locals know best. Let the school board, let the LEAs do their business. Help when you can, support, but yes, ma'am.
What do you make of this legislation about voters approving a sitting superintendent?
To my understanding of it, right, is it's a retention vote, right, which is an election. I think that is a bad idea.
Agreed.
I think that's what you are elected to do.
Right.
And
what's the thinking? What's the genesis behind that bill, would you say? Who's sponsoring
it? I don't know. It's for years there's been an elected superintendent led bill filed every year for memory of man runneth not to the contrary. And this is another way to say it without getting voted down the same way every year. And the idea, similar to the Court of Appeals judges, right? Court of Appeals judges have a yes/no vote. You may not know that, but the Tennessee Constitution requires judges to be elected. And several years ago, to avoid all of the election stuff that you go through when you're running for election, the legislature made it retention. So they're appointed, and then you vote yes or no to keep them or not. And the Supreme Court, a special Supreme Court at the time, ruled that fit the definition of an election. So these retention votes are elections.
Right.
And that would be an elected superintendent. We specifically. Yeah.
Is that helpful? Mm-hmm. I would only add that this has primarily been seen as a rural issue.
Really?
And that it's, every time I've seen the bill sponsored, it usually comes out of a small district, usually in the Upper Cumberland. And it's been, again, there's been an elected superintendent bill since I can remember, since we stopped electing superintendents. And I don't think that's going away anytime soon. And I've seen them in all types of permutations, from let's have a referendum on whether or not we should elect superintendents and then move forward electing superintendents from there, or an option like the retention, or sort of everything in between. But I always think it's going to be an optional issue. I don't think there's a whole lot of appetite for that to become a statewide issue. It would be district by district.
That's helpful.
It's by Senator Gresham out of Somerville.
Oh, really? She's the chair of the
Senate.
committee.
Senate Education Committee.
Senate Bill 0019.
You think that gives it more legs if she sponsored it?
Gives it one vote. Yeah, it doesn't hurt. And
Excuse me. Are these on?
they are again, every bill is also leverage and some sort of negotiating piece with various legislators. So always keep that in mind. It always means something, even the ones that don't mean anything. The next general topic is the Achievement School District. And again, we don't think there's much use for the Achievement School District and think it should be phased out. And at the very least, done in a way that is not hostile. And so that is our position on that. How that moves forward, we will see. There is always some push against the ASD, and there's always some defense for it. And we'll see what they have the appetite for. Next is assessments, and yes, ma'am.
I've asked for the last few years, are we going to do something to ask about us getting those schools that were taken over by the ASD? You know, at one point, they were supposed to be returned to the LEA, and it's just been kind of ambiguous wording. Nobody really knows when that'll happen, if it'll happen. Has TSBA or anyone else kind of talked about putting a stake in the ground with that?
We do talk about that nearly every year, and each year, and it's, and I think that's something that definitely at least needs to be clarified, if not demanded, right? That they return. I've not seen a bill that suggests that.
Wasn't there language though that at some point it's remanded back based on performance after so many years?
Yeah, it was, and what was odd about my memory of that was it was a 10-year thing. My memory is that it would return after 2 years of success, which I thought was odd because it was an incentive not to be successful. And so we'll work on that. Let's work on that. The next general topic are assessments, standards, and accountability. Last year, a bill was passed prohibiting the increase in state mandated tests for 3 years. And so that was, be sure that sticks around and maybe is expanded or extended beyond that time. It's going to be interesting to see with the position of the state with the new administration on all of these issues. One thing that there's one sub-item in under this heading that comes up with bills quite often, and that is that we don't want curriculum issues legislated. Legislature is probably in the worst position to create or demand or order curriculum, make decisions on curriculum issues. That will come up on bills more often than you think. It's like, wait a minute, they're trying to. So that's just something that comes up more than you might expect. The next general topic is recruiting and retention, getting the best teachers. Last year, again, the legislature passed some reciprocity, some way to extend your license from another state, and that will help. And we'll hope to even improve on that. And of course, adequate teacher compensation is an important part of recruitment and retention. The next general topic is vouchers, and as we mentioned, it will be a hot topic even as it's sort of in the background. I am tempted each year to say we're against vouchers and stop, period. But each year I sort of add other requirements. If they're going to pass vouchers, we add, here's what it needs to include. I think that keeps us in the conversation longer. So those are still there if you have any questions about those. And then the final general topic is that in-state college tuition should be available for every resident, every high school graduate, period.
Amen.
Can I go back to the first one, Mark?
Which one?
I'm sorry, on the funding issue, and you talked about when we change, I'm not sure I understood what you were saying. Were you talking about the state definition of economically disadvantaged, and you think
Yes.
that was miscalculated somehow?
Pardon me?
I'm sorry, and you think the state miscalculated that somehow?
No, I don't think they miscalculate. Here, so when I think they misestimated. Okay, so when they made the change, they knew it would reduce the number of students that fit into that category. And so they increased the amount per student. The idea was that would even out and that everyone would get what they got before. And I've heard, as recently as Friday, that the idea was that Nashville would get more than they did before under the new definition. I don't think that's how it worked out. I think it had more of an impact on the number of students than they expected. And I'm going to follow up with our budget people here to be sure. And if I can get an actual amount on that, the BEP is so convoluted.
Remember, that means someone else gets less. If we get more, someone else got less.
That's right.
So therefore,
Right.
someone may have been held harmless while they're.
So I'm going to be sure on that. But that is it seems to leave out quite a bit of our students who should be considered economically disadvantaged, or as the BEP puts it, at risk.
And I would love to see numbers, because I know that came up on our class call, and we've got one person saying it was one amount and other people saying it's another amount, and it's I would just like to see the actual numbers and how it impacted us and others.
I will see what I can find out about that
Okay,
and get back to you.
yeah.
And I have one thing for you. Going back to the assessment standards and accountability, one of the things as a parent of being in this school district forever, things change as far as the grading system. Of course, it's on that point scale, 1 point, 2 point, 3 point, 4 point. If it's an A, it's a 4 point. You know what I'm talking about. Does the last statement, explain that under the assessment standards and accountability? Because see, a lot of parents.
That is on the state report card. That's about the state report card that is an A through F, right? Is the new, and I think they delayed it a year. And the idea is that when you give an overall school grade, you're missing a whole lot of things if you're only basing it on the reading score and the math score. And giving a D minus or C or F to a school is misleading.
We're not doing that yet. We're not doing that, are we?
I'm sorry?
We're not doing that, are we? Are we doing that yet? Are we doing that?
I think is scheduled to start with this coming school year. They pushed that through, and it's really, I think Senator Gresham's a pet project isn't fair, but she is who pushed it. So fighting that before it actually became a thing, and the impact of it hasn't actually been felt, and there aren't specific examples of, oh look, this is so misleading for this school, is going to be hard this session. It will be easier once there's harm, unfortunately, right? Which would be after they do it a year or two.
So
I think realistically.
So if it goes into effect this fall, unless there's legislation to delay it again, then schools would get letter grades this coming fall. A summative letter grade and then a letter grade for each measure.
Right.
Chronic absenteeism, graduation rate, all that.
That wouldn't be good. Nope. You think it's going to pass?
It is planned to take effect. It has passed.
Oh, so it's
The
passed.
question is whether we can stop it. And like I said, it would be, I think there is, I don't like being don't want to set the odds on things. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But I don't see them stopping it before it happens. Is that?
I think it depends, one, on how testing goes this year. I think it depends on if there is enough of a push from teachers unions and school board folks and superintendent folks because those are the ones that really opposed it.
Right. But they opposed it when it came up before, right? And there are a lot of new legislators.
Yep.
There are a lot of new legislators that will listen anew. I think that's, and if there are problems with testing again, all bets are off, right? I mean, it will be the last 2 weeks of the session will be a mess of
Yep.
trying to deal with that again.
Imagine that Lee's new commissioner would be in favor of revoking A to F. That's my guess. Could be wrong.
All right. Session is getting started. It will ramp up pretty good over the next couple of weeks, and then I do not know when the TSBA Day on the Hill is, but if you
I can tell you where it is. Where it is. Hold on. Or y'all go ahead.
every time there's a day on the Hill that you may be invited to, whatever group or topic, let me know. Let's go see folks while you're up there.
Monday, February the, can't read it, sorry, 18th.
February 18th?
Yes.
We got an email about it.
No, I'm talking about him. No, it's President's Day.
And double check, that's what I
Because
wrote
he's-
down,
because
unless
he's-
I'm wrong.
Because he's presidential. Maybe that's because schools are closed, maybe, yeah, I don't
And
know.
it's the MNPS.
But it's professional development days for teachers, I think.
And that's the day that Equity University Summit.
Yeah. Thanks for,
Questions?
thanks
Thank
for
you very
your hard
much.
work on that.
Thank y'all.
What other ways would you like us to be supporting or helping? Besides just calling, visiting? putting-
Call who you know. I'll get a list when I need you, I may call you. Answer the phone. And what you can do, and if you have advice, please let me know. I need your input.
So it's going.
Already,
Pardon me?
out already? I mean, I know education has been broken up into 4 different subcommittees this year. Are they still meeting on Tuesdays and Wednesdays? Do we have a full schedule yet?
I have not seen the full schedule. I've not seen this full schedule. I need to.
I'd only add that we all travel in different circles, so if you hear things that we may not hear, don't assume that because you've heard it after we have. It's quite possible that you've found something out before we did.
All I
Motion on a
know
bill, or, some traction, or somebody wants to make a change, or you're hearing something in the wind. You know where to find me, or Mark.
Perfect, thank you. When you get that list, would you mind letting us know who's on each education subcommittee?
I can get you all I have the list of who's on it now. I
Perfect,
don't.
okay.
Yeah, I don't know that they've set meeting schedules yet.
But sometimes they have, I don't know.
That's a
Okay.
lot of committees.
It is a whole lot. And
The
then-
one to watch is the Innovation Committee. That's the one where all the innovation's gonna happen.
And how bills are assigned to the subcommittees
Right.
is a mystery that I'm not sure.
Tell me how school bus bills went in transportation. No, but we still need to be aware of transportation committee because of school bus bills. That
Right,
sort of
right. Right. It's not just education committees, right? I mean, there'll be, for example, the transportation committee is going to
Budget,
get school
budget,
bus
finance.
issues.
finance.
And
Do we intend to have a vote on this, or no?
do not need to vote on it.
Okay.
Give me the thumbs up and I'm running.
Not today, obviously, but just at any time, whether. Okay.
Last year was the first time we, as a school system, had a legislative.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So we're adjourned until 4, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm gonna step out.
Hey, do you have copies of the WEAL report?
Hey, Mark, did y'all